Hello and welcome to the Witch Source. I'm Whitney, and I had mentioned during the live readings the benefits of freezer spells. So I wanted to go ahead and share with you guys just a little bit about freezer spells and how they work and how you can do them. So freezer spells, there's a variety of ways you can do freezer spells. People have been doing them for a very long time. And they are also used in hoodoo, voodoo, things like that, where they can get a lot more complicated than what I'm going to show you. And they also sometimes will use things like cow tongue and different things. None of that really resonates with me. So the freezer spells that I do that have been very effective are very simple. Okay, and so when would you use a freezer spell? Well, if let's say you have a coworker who is just hateful towards you, nasty, no good reason, it's just that's how they are towards you, and you want that behavior to stop, you could freeze that coworker. Okay. The same thing could go for a family member. Um, I tend to use freezer spells as a form of protection when I want actions or behaviors towards me to stop. So I would caution people to really think about when you're freezing things, what your reasoning is, and be very clear on your intention because your intention is the most important thing. So you can use freezer spells in that way. You can also use freezer spells on yourself. And this has also been very effective. So, an example of why you would do a freezer spell on yourself. Let's say you are grieving a loss of a loved one, and it is crippling the amount of grief to the point where you can barely function. Okay. You can freeze the grief. All right. And then when you are better and more equipped and able to deal with the grief and process the grief, you can then unfreeze it. Okay. Other options would be like if you're going through a divorce and it's a nasty divorce, you might want to not only freeze your ex, but also, any kind of behavior activity that's going on there towards you, but also freeze yourself, so you could freeze your stress, anxiety, any negativity, things like that to help you think more rationally and be able to function. You can also freeze things like pain, migraines, headaches, seizures. Now, when you're dealing with medical illnesses that you're trying to freeze, um, please remember that freezing is, when you're doing a freezer spell on yourself, freezing is not a fix. It's not a cure. Okay. You still want to go deal with the grief and deal with the emotions and deal with and manage the stress. You still want to seek out therapy if that's needed, mental health professionals, physicians for illnesses, things like that. So this is not in replacement. It is complementary to aid in your healing. Okay. So I just wanted to make that very clear. So there's a few options. Bay leaves are really great to use. So if I was going to freeze myself, I would write my full name, and I'm just using a marker. I would write my full name and my date of birth on the bay leaf. And this is just a little tidbit of a bay leaf, which is fine. I mean, if you've got a larger one, you've got more room to write. But I would write my full name and date of birth. And then on the other side, I could write exactly what it is that I want to freeze. So say pain, headache. If you're freezing somebody else, you would write their full name if you know it and their birth date if you know it. Okay. If you don't know those things, it's okay. All right. Again, it's the intention behind it that makes a big difference. Okay. So as you're writing out, let's say you're freezing that coworker, for example, you'd write their name and birthday if you know it. If you don't know it, just their name. And on the backside, you could freeze. You could write out like negativity, you know, communication if you want them to just leave you alone altogether, what have you. But you really want to be very clear. Now, if you are not sure 100% of the how to write out, okay, Now you want to keep it very short and sweet and simple. So for example, you would write pain, you would write negativity, you would write what have you, whatever you're wanting to freeze. Okay, you don't want to write out, I want this person to leave me alone. Okay, you don't have to write all that out. If you feel more comfortable doing that, you can. Okay, but you don't have to. You can simply just write their name and hold it and just put all the intention of, I want this person to leave me alone. Okay, and you put all that intention into the bay leaf. Okay, and you don't have to write any of the stuff, just their name. All right, now the other option is, if you don't have a bay leaf, a simple sheet of paper will do as well. Okay, you're again going to write their name, their date of birth, and what it is that you're wanting to freeze. Or again, you can just really plug in the intention without writing it all out. That is effective as well. Now, if you decide to write out everything that you want to freeze, make sure that when you are writing it, you are still plugging it with all that intention. Okay? Now, at this point, you're very clear on who you're freezing, why you're freezing them. You've either written out what you're freezing or you've infused the intention. Okay, so then you're just going to take a little container. Okay, if you've got a sheet of paper, you can fold it up. If you've got the bay leaf, just drop it in. Now, the trick to getting them frozen is you want all of it frozen. Okay, you don't want a portion of it frozen. So what I like to do is I will put the stuff in the container and I will take ice cubes and I will drop these ice cubes on top because it's going to keep it from floating. Okay, and then I'm going to fill it up with water. Now, it's going to freeze, okay? So you need to leave a little space. So don't fill it up all the way, right? Like I've stopped, it's hard to see, but I've stopped and I've left myself room because you want, when it freezes, it's going to expand, okay? So if you're using a glass container, leave lots of room for it to freeze and the water to expand. Otherwise, you're going to bust your glass, okay? So I would take this, and if I put it to the side, you'll see the paper's not covered. But if you could get a good angle, the ice cubes kind of help weigh it down. And if you need to add another ice cube, you can. But you would pop this in the freezer and you're done. You're good. They are on ice, okay? Now, if you don't have ice cubes, that's okay too. What you're going to do if you don't have ice cubes, all right, is you'll fill it up halfway, okay, right? And it'll float, and that's fine. Put the lid on it, pop that in the freezer. The next day, when it's frozen, you'll add the rest of the water on top because it's going to still be frozen, and then you can seal it up. Okay, now if when you add the additional water the next day, because the idea, is again, you want it to be frozen in the middle. Okay, so if it floats to the top when you add water the next day, flip the ice cube over. Okay, so the ice is on the top and then the paper and stuff is on the bottom along with the water that's going to freeze the rest of the way. All right, so there's options there. So give it a try, and the results honestly are very quick. All right, they happen super, super fast. I think you'd be really surprised about how quickly results can happen with these freezer spells. Again, if you're freezing yourself, you can decide how long do you need it to be frozen for, right? Like if it could be a couple months, it could be a week, depending on what you're dealing with, what you're going through. It could be a year, 2 years, or you can leave it in the freezer for the rest of your life, okay? Now, if you've frozen somebody else, you get to decide when it's time to take them out of the freezer, okay? If you switch jobs, go ahead and take that coworker out of the freezer because you don't have to deal with them anymore, okay? If you've frozen an ex and, okay, it's been years, you haven't heard from them, they haven't bothered you, you could probably go ahead and take them out of the freezer. If they pop back up in your life, throw them back in the freezer. It's that simple. But it's a very effective and very useful, and as you can see, quick and easy spell, okay? It's all about making sure that intention gets put in there very thoroughly, okay? That's what really matters. So there's some options. I hope you play around with it. Please let us know what kind of results you're getting from doing these freezer spells, because I'm telling you, I have found them to be extremely useful and extremely powerful and very, very effective, and very quickly do they take effect. So good luck to you. I hope this is helpful to you. And if you have questions about spells, please make sure you're getting in the Facebook group. Okay, so I don't know where you're seeing this or possibly hearing about it, but check us out. If you're not already, follow us on Facebook, that's The Witch Source. We're also on Instagram, and please subscribe on YouTube. We appreciate it. And if you're on Facebook and you follow us on the page, you'll see the option to join the group, and then you can share your results, ask questions, get advice on